What's going on, guys? Alex here with 814 ADC, and today I'm ready to do my full review on the Kizer Knives Mercury. So this is in via the Lefty passaround group, and this is honestly a funky knife for me. I think I said it in the unboxing of this knife, but I had no interest in this until Kevin was telling people that he was seeing, parallels from this knife to like a $400, $500, $600 CNC small batch knife that you see out there, like Oz Roosevelt and Brown knives and stuff like that. So when he told me that, and obviously he's telling me that it's not, or he was saying in meaning that it wasn't on those levels, but he just thought for the price tag, and he was just kind of blown away for how good this knife felt. So when he said that, I had to check it out. Design wise, I'm gonna go right out and say it. I don't like the way this knife looks. But other things about it I do really like. It has a good snappy action, and there's some other good things about it. So we're gonna see how the review goes and how what the final number is. But I expect it's gonna be kind of some good things and other pretty low things. So we'll see. But yeah. So first we're gonna talk about materials, which this is rocking a titanium frame that is anode to be kind of a bronze color. Almost said flavor. Milled titanium pocklet. The screw in the very end here is pretty cool. You can see it's put together there like a clamshell sort of feature, the line right down the middle. You have a super clean show scale side, liner lock with plenty of lock bar access, as you do plenty of jipping there as well. See what the official blade shape is called. So it is a sheep's foot blade, just a very long, drawn-out sheep's foot blade. Comes down to a pretty thin edge, about standard thickness on the S35VN blade, S35VN, and then the Mercury. So S35VN right there. Then the Mercury, and that is the designer's maker's mark. But I really like the micro milling that the titanium has on here. It feels really good in the hand. Nice thin overall knife. So some quick stats, like I did say, it is an S35VN blade. Overall length, 7.35 inches. Blade length is 3.25 inches. Cutting edge, 3.12. Blade width, 0.52 inches. Blade thickness, 0.11 inches. Sheep's foot, flat grind, satin finish. Okay, so sorry, it's not a bronze. It is technically a gold color on the titanium, coming right in at 2 ounces. Yeah, that's really all you need to know. So it is an Alex Berkowitz design. I'm not super familiar with his work, but going off the price tag and how, for the materials, I think, especially with the build quality, I do really think that it's, I'm seeing what Kevin means with how he was saying this feels like a much more expensive knife. It really does. And I think, putting that with the materials for the price, I have to give it, a solid 4.5. I don't think it's quite, I maybe could see would want a little bit better blade steel than S35VN. No knock on S35VN at all, but I just think, but I still think a 4.5 is still a very good, rating for this knife. Like I said, when you consider materials and price point and the build quality, I do think that's a very fair one. So next up, we're going to talk about aesthetic. And honestly, guys, I'm going to be 100% honest. This knife gets probably a 1 for me. The aesthetic is not doing it for me. I do not like, the blade shape. This looks like some sort of like straight razor. And, the handle's okay. I don't mind the handle. So I guess I'll give it a 1.5. I don't want to give it a bare bones 1, but I'm just not, it doesn't do it for me at all. Never has. So I'm just going to be, quite simple with that. I don't think it's very appealing to me personally. But next up, we're gonna talk about action. Now the action is good. You have a flipper tab right here with jimping on the front. And that's the only way of deploying this knife. The knife does stick out a little bit down here, so you could maybe try to like middle finger flick it with your ring finger, but odds are not gonna happen. So as far as detent goes, I can't even get it out of there with my fingers. Detent's pretty snappy. You guys can see, flies right out of there. No blade play at all. This thing is locked up really, really tight, which is nice to see. But just flies out. Now for closed, you do have plenty of access there with the lock bar access. And this thing just drops to your nail. When shaken, it's closed. Drops to your nail. A couple micro shakes. It's very, very smooth, very sort of hydraulic feeling. But just, I mean, Kizer has really always been, a very consistent producer of knives. But I think they've really upped their game recently. And just the tolerances on this are super high. Closing actions, very, very smooth, very good. Again, very hydraulic sort of feeling. If you kind of put hydraulic with bearings, if that makes sense. Great snappy flipper tab. I don't tend to love knives that only have one opening method like a flipper. I like when they have thumb studs or fullers or holes or top flippers or whatever it may be. But as far as flipper only knives go, the action's very good. And I can't say, it's a 5. I'm gonna say that. I kind of lost my train of thought with what I was gonna say before that. But I'm gonna give it a 5. Very snappy, very fun to fidget with. Honestly, I have grabbed this quite a few times just to fidget with it around the house. It's fun to fidget with. It's great action, great close, great open. Can't complain at all. So next up, we're gonna talk about acoustics. It's a decent thwack on the open. On the close, it's okay. You can hear it, but it's not very loud. I'm going to give it a 3, kind of middle of the pack. Not the worst I've ever heard, but definitely not the best. So I think a 3 is a very fair, rating for it. Next up, we're going to talk about ergos. Now, ergos are pretty good. It's obviously a very, very thin knife. Not a very big handle at all. Nice and long and thin. So I can get all 4 fingers on here very easily. Have a little bit of the handle sticking out there. But overall, it's very comfortable. Again, the titanium has the micro milling on it, which comes into play very nicely when you're talking about grip and how you're holding the knife. But nice and comfortable. And then you have the jimping down here on the flipper, or excuse me, not the flipper tab. The liner lock, which provides a little bit of grip too. Your thumb kind of lands right out here, which is nice for push cuts. Pinch grip works really good with this knife for dropping down. You do have the nice low point for dragging through packages, letters, tracing around labels for shipping, different knives, different things like that. Reverse grip, I don't know if I would do some 7-Eleven gas station knife fights with this knife. Probably not the best idea, but you can hold it in that method if you need to. Reverse hammer grip works really good if you're going to be pulling through anything like rope, but odds are you're probably not going to be hard using this style of knife. However, I can't take away from the ergos. It's comfortable. You do have the flipper tab as a nice natural restriction point. You can choke up and use the flipper. I'm going to call it a flipper choil. It's comfortable, but you are very close to that edge right there on the blade. So I would be very careful, what you're cutting around and when you're cutting around things. Definitely, just have that in the back of your mind. Like, okay, I'm pretty dang close to the edge of the blade. Don't want to slip and, slice your finger up. So definitely, again, keep that in the back of your head. But for ergos, honestly, I can't take anything away from it as much as I don't like the way the knife looks. It is very comfortable. No hot spot at all from the middle titanium pot clip. You can definitely feel it, but unless you're just like death gripping this knife, it's not causing a hot spot at all. So is it the best, thing I've ever handled? No. And when you get these thinner knives, that don't have much real estate, your hand tends to wrap around more. And it kind of like touch, I don't know, it feels different. So I'm not going to give it a 5. I am going to give it a 4.5. I do think it's very good, but I wouldn't say perfect, for me, but still very, very solid. So next up is carry. Now this is coming in at 2 ounces, and so it's very lightweight, nice and thin, sits in the pocket real well. You do have a small flipper tab, of course, down here with jimping. So if you're going down past it for change, chapstick, medicine, and things of that nature, you do have a small risk of when you pull your hand up out of there, you could pull the knife out with you, but I don't think it's going to cause, much of. I never had that issue with anything, so I don't think you guys will too. But again, that's just something I always like to, portray to you guys, because weirder things have happened, and it's definitely, the elements of pulling it up out of your pocket are there. So I just, want to be transparent with you. But carries in the pocket very well. You have about that much of the knife sticking up out of there, so not bad at all. and I think the pocket lip looks good from an aesthetic standpoint. That's about the only thing I really liked about this knife from an aesthetic standpoint. If I'm being honest, but you guys already know that. That's why we bumped it from a 1 to 1.5, I guess. That makes sense. So yeah, I don't know. I think it carries well. It's thin. It's, you know, it's lightweight, things of that nature. I'm going to go 4. I don't think it's, you know, the best carry ever, but I definitely don't think it's the worst. You know, I need to quit saying that. I say that too often when I'm trying to evaluate why I'm ranking it this over this and so forth. But it's a very, you know, nice, small gentleman's carry knife. And I guess that kind of leads me into my final category, excuse me, of price point and would I recommend this knife. So I found it on Blade HQ for $139. I think that's a very fair price. I think Kizer, you know, has some awesome knives from $100 to $150. I think they make some great products in that price range. And honestly, this is right there as well. Honestly, excuse me, my voice is getting a little hoarse. You know, from a pure, you know, how well is this made standpoint, the tolerances are probably the best I've ever felt from Kizer. They're really smooth. The build quality is phenomenal. So I do have to agree with Kevin on, you know, how he feels like this is a, you know, $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 knife. I can definitely see that. Just a fantastic action, really smooth, you know, pretty good overall ergos, carries pretty solidly. Just again, the biggest thing for me is just how I don't like the way this knife looks. Everything else about the knife, I think it's pretty solid. I really have enjoyed some things about it, but I just think it's, personally, I think it's ugly. I'm not, you know, and that's to each their own. Again, this is my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. You guys could think it's the best looking knife ever. I'm just not a fan of the big, again, long, drawn out blade. Handle shape's okay, but overall, I'm just, again, not a fan of it, and that's okay. Everyone doesn't have to like everything and so on and so forth, but when you are comparing price to value, $140 for S35VN for a really cool milled gold titanium handle, milled pocket clip, excuse me, fantastic action, snappy, smooth on the close, solid carry, good ergos all around. I do have to give that a 5. I think it's really in a sweet spot there. So let's see what I come up with. Try to do some quick math here. This thing tends to roll back and forth. All right, so if my math is correct, which I'm hoping it is, I have the Kizer Mercury coming in at a 27.5. So for me, that is on the okay category. That's the first knife there so far in 2024. And I think that's fair for how, you know, I felt about it. It's okay. Obviously, I'm not going to go over everything I just talked about because that's what the 14 minutes of a video is for. But really, the only takeaway from this knife is I just don't like the way it looks. You know, has good other things about it. So I'll tell you this: if you guys, if you guys are a fan of how this knife looks and the aesthetic of this knife, absolutely go buy it. You guys are going to be pleased with it. It's going to serve you well. Again, I think it's a great, if you like the way the knife looks, a really, really good gentleman carry knife, a really good sort of, if if you're dressing up, if you're going out for a date night, I really think this is a fantastic option you can add to your collection. I could see it being some, really dressing up in some slacks or in a suit and just tucking this in because it just fits that vibe, the golden titanium, the long, just like elegant style sort of blade handle. So I think if you guys like the way it looks, absolutely buy it. I can recommend it that way. I'm not a fan of how it looks, therefore I think that's why it's so low on my scale. But yeah, 27.5 on the Kizer Knives Mercury. Leave a comment down below. Do you guys, are you on my side about it? Do you like the way the knife looks? Do you not like the way the knife looks? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But I'm going to wrap it up now. So thank you guys again so much for watching. I greatly appreciate each and every single one of you guys. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your morning, evening, night, whenever you're watching this. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.